3 verses from Paramatma Sandarbha. PhD on 3 verses. And in his explanation, what is as follows. From the Sandarbhas, we can understand that the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. And the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam are the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. They're one and the same. So his strategy, because naturally a learned fellow like him wants to establish that the person who he's heard from is the highest. So his strategy was Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest, number one. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the same as the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the highest. So in establishing the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam and the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that they're the same, so there's another main message about Lord Chaitanya's teachings. And the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are summarized by the phrase Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. And Tattva, that's the truths, are simultaneously one with and different from one another. The truths are Beda and Abeda. Beda means different. Abeda means non-different. The absolute truth, the highest truth, is made up of truths that are simultaneously one and different. That is to say, for example, Krishna is the source of everything. There isn't something, matter or spirit, that doesn't come from Krishna. Everything comes from Krishna. The way the Prabhupada said it was like this. There are two things. There's Krishna and there's Krishnas. And there's not a third thing in the creation of God. Very simple. So there's this relationship of oneness between all things and their source of emanation because they exist because of the source. And that which comes from the source is not the source, so there's a difference, but a simultaneous oneness and difference of all things from the source of all things. And that's Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, or there is only one shelter of all things, their source. That's the shelter of all things. The Srimad Bhagavatam, we're going to be discussing 3 verses. They're prayers of Prahlada to Lord Nrsimhadeva. And in the prayers of Prahlada, the circumstances, Prahlada has been tormented and tortured and attempted murder and so many horrible things. And Hiranyakashipu his father was the tormentor and torturer. And he became so angry, do you know the story? He became so angry that no matter what the most powerful person in the universe, he couldn't do anything to harm Prahlada. He wanted to kill Prahlada, he couldn't kill him. He tried this, he tried that, he tried the other thing. It didn't work. He was always protected by Lord Nrsimhadeva. So he wanted to know from Prahlada, where are you getting your power from? Same place you are. The source of everything. It's where all power comes from, is the powerful. Oh, where is he? I'll kill him. Prahlada said, He's everywhere. Oh, he's everywhere. You know the story. Is he in this pillar? He's everywhere, so he's got to be in the pillar. So he took his sword and smashed the pillar, and from the pillar came Lord Nrsimhadeva. And he finished, Lord Nrsimhadeva finished Hiranyakashipu. The soldiers of Hiranyakashipu came rushing to take revenge. Lord Nrsimhadeva manifested hundreds and thousands of arms and bifurcated all those soldiers that came rushing at him. And they were finished, as was Hiranyakashipu, finished. And he was so angry, he was roaring and roaring, half man, half lion, Lord Nrsimhadeva, roaring and roaring. The demigods tried, there's a beautiful section of this Canto 7. The demigods are offering prayers. Really eloquent, very beautiful, pristine, elevating and elevated prayers. Lord Nrsimhadeva was still roaring. They wanted to calm him down. And they reasoned he came because of Prahlada, so maybe Prahlada should go forward and offer prayers. And Prahlada didn't feel he was qualified. Oh my, just a little boy. But they insisted and insisted, and they're his superiors, so he came forward and started offering prayers. And they're very beautiful prayers. So that's a section that we're reading from. The prayers of Prahlada to Lord Nrsimhadeva. And where we are, we'll be covering 3 verses, 20, 21, 22. So the earlier parts, I'm not going to redo because we've done them already. Here's the translation of text 20. Now remember, we're just going to be covering 3. Translation, it's color-coded, but that's okay. My dear Lord, everyone in this material world is under the modes of material nature, being influenced by goodness, passion, and ignorance. Everyone, from the greatest personality, Lord Brahma, down to the small ant, work under the influence of these modes. Therefore, everyone in this material world is influenced by your energy, the cause for which they work, the place where they work, the time when they work, the matter due to which they work, the goal of life they have considered final, and the process for obtaining this goal are all nothing but manifestations of your energy. Indeed, the energy and energetic are identical, but all of them are manifestations of you. So if you're listening carefully, it's a little distracting with it. Yeah, what can you do? Yeah. It's just one of those things. So you see in the last line, the energy and the energetic are identical. All of them are but manifestations of you. So the energy, that's which comes from the energetic, the supreme source of everything. The energy and the energetic are identical. That's the oneness. And the energy and the energy comes from the energetic. So there's the difference. This is the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I'll say it again. Achintya means inconceivable. Beda abeda. Inconceivably, everything is simultaneously one with and different from, which is the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we're of God, we're of Krishna, but we're not Krishna. We're Krishna's energy. The body is a certain category, the soul is another category, and the expansions of the Supreme Soul are another category. Shakti Tattva, Jiva Tattva, Vishnu Tattva, but they're all expansions of that same source. So there's a relationship, it's right in the verse, there's a relationship of oneness and difference of all things with the Supreme. All are nothing but manifestations of your energy. Indeed, since the energy and the energetic are identical, all of them are but manifestations of you. And Srila Prabhupada has written purports for all the verses. We're just going to be discussing 3 verses, 20, 21, 22. Here's Prabhupada's purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul within the core of everyone's heart, gives inspirations for action according to one's mentality. All of these mentalities are merely facilities given by Krishna to the person acting. Because everyone has a different goal of life, everyone acts differently, as guided by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is a nice description of the Paramatma feature. What does that mean? There are 3 features of the Absolute Truth. There's the Absolute Truth who exists in the spiritual world, in the Vaikuntha realm, is the Personality of Godhead. And the Personality of Godhead expands so many living entities, like pictured over there on the left, living entities with different bodies. And that original Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests himself within each body as Paramatma. So there are these 2. The Atma, the individual soul, and Paramatma, the Supreme Soul. It's the same as what's taught in Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches living entities are his angsas. Mamevangsa jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. Living entities are these eternal fragmental parts. And within each Atma, there's an expansion of Paramatma. The painting is meant to illustrate different forms and species of life, and there's a soul within each one that animates those forms of life. And up top, that's the Paramatma that manifests within the heart of every Jiva soul. It's the same Paramatma that's in the heart of every Jiva soul. So let's take a guess. There's something like maybe 20, 25 human beings assembled here right now. There's probably some other living entities, at least microbes and germs, but 20, 25 humans. And there's a soul within each body, and there's a Paramatma within each soul. And that Paramatma within each soul is recognizing the mentality of each soul. He gives inspiration how to act. We are all being guided by the same Supreme Soul. That's what the verse is saying. We have a different goal to achieve, naturally. And according to the goal, there's an intention to go after this goal or go after that goal. And some intelligence is supplied to achieve this or achieve that. That's Super Soul. So Prahlada is saying to Lord Nrsimhadeva, you are the source of that Paramatma. You are within the heart of every living entity. As long as we work according to our material senses, we're in material life. And then In contrast, there's the spiritual position. As soon as we act according to the real transcendental direction of the Lord, our position is spiritual. Same place, one can be in material consciousness, one can be in spiritual consciousness, depending upon our orientation or our goal. And that consciousness is of the soul, but direction, whether to turn left or turn right, whether to do this or do that, direction is this coming from Supersoul. Prahlada's acknowledging this. When one gives up materially designated positions and works directly under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one's spiritual life is revived. This is described as svarupena vyavastati. This verse, Swarupena Vyavastati, is taken from another section of the Bhagavatam. This other section of the Bhagavatam it's in the 11th canto Bhagavatam, where it's describing mukti. The verse goes, Muktir hitvanyata rupam swarupena vyavastati. Swarupa, meaning one's own form, swarupa. Vyavastati, being situated in one's own spiritual form. Being situated in one's own spiritual form, that's what mukti is. And when one is situated in one's spiritual form, we're not pushed or pulled by material conditioning. We're acting according to our liberated position. Just like these two children over here. They're behaving like children because they're in bodies of children. They're just doing what children do. They're playing. Very playful little boy and girl. Naturally so, nothing, no harm. But each of us act according to the impulses of the modes of nature and according to the indication that Supersoul gives to do this or do that, and from moment to moment. We're covered by bodies, and according to the body that we have, there's a different condition to nature. And then, according to the body we have and the conditioned nature, Supersoul recognizes that tendency or that liking for happiness, and then people act. A classic one that Prabhupada would give is when one gets the body of a dog. What do? You do what dogs do. Woof, woof. And you wag your tail. And you bark. And you chew on bones. Because that's what dogs do. And we don't do those. We don't even have a tail. But according to the covering, when it becomes conditioned by the covering, and Supersoul gives intelligence how to do what that body indicates the impulses of the modes of nature do according to the body that we have. However, the good news is there is a position where one can become free from conditioning. And that's what's being described here. Swarupena vyavasati, being situated in one's original constitutional position, that's mukti. Liberation from material bondage. So Prahlada is liberated from material bondage, although he's in a little boy's body. Why or how is that achieved? His consciousness is absorbed in transcendence. His consciousness absorbed in Lord Nrsimhadeva. He's not intimidated or made fearful by the rah. Have any of you anyone here been to Mayapur? Okay. In Mayapur, there's a Nrsimhadeva deity. Yes? And even if you haven't been to Mayapur, he's such a celebrated deity. There's photographs of that deity all over the place. There's some history. You want to hear the history? The history is, during Bhaktisiddhanta's time, that's prior to ISKCON, during Bhaktisiddhanta's time, there was some dacoits that came on the property of the main temple, the Chaitanya Gaudiya Math, and they came to steal. They had guns, they had choppers, from the agricultural field, and they came, doing their stealing with weapons in hand. So they didn't get much, but they got something, and the consequence was Bhaktisiddhanta arranged for a deity of Lord Nrsimhadeva to protect the devotees in the Dham. Some time passed, and in the passage of time, ISKCON Mayapur started growing and growing and growing. This is, several decades later. And on the altar, there were deities of brass deities of Radha Madhava, about this tall, brass deities. And particularly Radharani looked golden. So the dacoits thought, a golden deity. They thought she was golden. So in the middle of the night, they broke in, went on the altar, and grabbed Radha Madhava and ran, because they were stealing gold. And the pujari woke up. The pujari made a lot of noise. When the pujari made a lot of noise, they woke up the whole campus. The whole campus went chasing after these dacoits right out to the gate. Some of you may know Bhakti Raghava Swami. He has half of one leg and he walks on crutches, because he was a brahmachari at the time, and he went running after the dacoits, and they had a shotgun and they shot off half his leg. He had to have half his leg amputated in trying to save Radha Madhava. So a decision was made based upon what Bhaktisiddhanta had done, that they wanted to get a deity, a large deity of Lord Nrsimhadeva for Mayapur. So they did some research. They found there was a very special murti maker in South India, and they went by train, overnight train, to visit South India and personally visit the murti maker and make all the arrangements, give a down payment and the whole thing. On the way, one of the devotees had a dream. Lord Nrsimhadeva appeared to him in his dream, and it was the Ugra Nrsimha. And it looked, when you see it, especially in Chandan Yatra, like Akshaya Tritiya just happened, so that the deity was covered in chand, you could see a big smile, but there's also big sharp teeth. So the devotee that had this dream, told the murti maker, "This is the dream I had on my way to come visit you." He said, "Oh, I know that form. That's Ugra." Ugra means Ugra Nrsimha. Yes, I can make that deity. And so he began, after a certain period of time, they were to come back pick up the finished deity. In the course of time, there was a man who was envious of ISKCON specifically. And so he heard that the murti maker is making this deity of Lord Nrsimhadeva. So he went to the murti maker and offered him a bribe. I'll double the amount that they gave you. Give me the deity. He said, "No, I don't take bribes." He was an honest man. And he said, he told the man I can't, besides I can't, when the devotees came, the Murti Maker told the devotees, you should know, I want you to know you have an enemy. You may have more than one, but you have this wealthy enemy. He wanted the deity. And the man went away, not only because I told him I won't take a bribe, but I told him this particular deity is the form of Lord Nrsimhadeva just before he pounces on Hiranyakashipu. And if the worshipper makes offense against the deity, the worshipper will be destroyed and the whole community will have a serious problem. And the man said, oh, that's very good. Please finish with the deity. So the man went away. So the Murti Maker told them, this deity that you asked, it's true what I said. But the part that I didn't tell him is, if the deity is not the main deity in the temple, but there is another main deity in the temple, then that Nrsimhadeva takes on the mood of the main deity in the temple. I didn't tell him that. Your main deity is Radhamadeva. So Lord Nrsimhadeva is taking the mood of Radhamadeva. So you'll be very happy. He gives protection, but protection isn't always like from danger, protection from danger, but danger, what's the most dangerous thing is nescience. Darkness of ignorance, that's the most dangerous thing. So Lord Nrsimhadeva protects one from that darkness of ignorance. And he helps one who wants liberation achieve it. But there's the material designation feature that we have to let go of. I mean, we have a body, but it's not me. We have a mind, but it's not me. We have gross and subtle coverings, but it's not me. So a spiritual conception of self goes well with the spiritual experience of worshipping Lord Nrsimhadeva. Prahlada has it, so he was fearless. Here's the verse, or an application of that verse, as you see in the painting. There's Narada in his previous life. In Canto 10, Chapter 7, Narada describes his previous life. And in Canto 2, Chapter 10, there's a description, this verse, where the body, the expired body of Narada is left behind, and Narada rises from that expired body in his spiritual form, his Svarup, his spiritual form. And that's the Bhagavatam conception of I didn't catch what she said. Oh yeah. He's eternal associate of Lord. He's a Vaikunthavasi. No. But they don't look like Narada though. Our spiritual form is not Narada's spiritual form. His is an eternal form residing in Vaikuntha. He's a Vaikuntha resident. And he descended for the purpose of assisting the personality of Godhead in his pastimes. So aprakat and prakat pastimes. We're okay? Should I go on? The second of three verses is 21. O Lord, O Supreme Eternal. Again, this is Prahlada speaking to Lord, or praying to Lord Nrsimhadeva. O Lord, O Supreme Eternal, by expanding your plenary portion, that's the Supersoul, you have created the subtle bodies of the living entities through the agency of your external energy, which is agitated by time. So here he's just giving a description of creation and the influence of time within creation. I'll read it again. By expanding your plenary portion, you have created the subtle bodies. In purple letters at the top, it's mana, that's the subtle body, of the living entities through the agency of your external energy, which is agitated by time. Kalena chodita, agitated by time. Thus the mind entraps the living entity in unlimited varieties of desires. Chandomayam, unlimited varieties of desires, to be fulfilled by the Vedic directions of karmakanda, or fruitive activity, and the 16 elements. We'll hear further what the 16 elements means. It's pretty easy. One of the 16 is the mind. Who can get free from this entanglement unless he takes shelter of your lotus feet? Samsara chakram aja ko titaret tvad anyaha. So the process of liberation from the entanglement in material existence is taking shelter of the lotus feet, and otherwise of the Supreme Lord. And otherwise, we're moved by the force of time, which agitates unlimited desires. Which one do you want? Prahlada is chosen. The time factor is a fascinating topic. I don't know if you like that topic. I like that topic. Time energy, Kala Shakti, brings things into being, it sustains things, and it destroys things. Mainly we hear about the destructive force of time. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, time I am the destroyer of all things. It's true, time destroys all things. But it's also true that time brings things into being. Because without time, things don't happen. Just like here we are, we're sitting in this room together, this apartment. And sometime we weren't here. And we're here for some time, and after some time we're going to disperse. Except the people that live here, we probably won't disperse. But time moves matter. Time is there's a very important factor in creation and destruction and in maintenance. The time factor. All the activities in both the spiritual and material world are certainly conducted by the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the agency of either the material or spiritual nature. So the illustrations here are meant to show the abode of Krishna in the spiritual realm. Down here in the lower right, that's Mahavishnu generating so many universes. And on the lower left, it's Lord Brahma within one universe, doing what he does, Sarga and Visarga. And there's one source of everything. The Personality of Godhead acts as through his material or spiritual energies to do what goes on in the spiritual or the material realm. To enjoy the material energy, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, created the material world and gave the living entity the facilities through the 16 kinds of perverted support. So 5 knowledge acquiring, 5 working senses, 5 elements, Panchabhuta, and at the bottom, that's number 16, our dear friend, the mind. So through those agency of those 16 kinds of perverted support, the creation goes, material enjoyment is facilitated. Supposing one doesn't have material desire, we don't need the material world. Why does the material world exist? Because we wanted it. Just a little sharing. One year I was attending a Rath Yatra. And at the end of the Rath Yatra, there's generally a festival. And so they brought forward, because they know that I visit China, they brought forward a Chinese lady. She was, very animated type of person. She said, I have just one question. She was really enthusiastic to ask her question. So what's that? Why creation? And my answer was, because we wanted it. That's why. No, it's how, not here. Question wasn't how. The question was why. Because of desires to be the enjoyer of the material energy, creation is provided in all of its diversities with different differences. The elements, the working senses, knowledge acquiring senses, and the mind. And there's different minds and different bodies and different forms of life. And there's lots of variegatedness over here. And it's all orchestrated by Paramatma. The wheel of repeated birth and death is created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But to direct the bewildered living entities to progress toward liberation, according to varied stages of advancement, different directions are given in the Vedas. Now, the Vedas are vast. If you spent a little time in Vedic text, my expression is, it's an ocean that doesn't have a bottom. All oceans have a bottom, but the Vedas don't have a bottom. It's an ocean of whatever it is. Because living entities have different desires, there are differences, procedures in the Vedas to achieve this, that, and the other thing, and it's very complicated, or at least very intricate and involved, because it includes everything. That's the nature of the Vedas. Different directions are given in the Vedas according to the different desires of the living entities to achieve things they want. The fallen, conditioned living entity, trapped by the external energy, loiters in the material world, but if by good fortune he meets a bona fide representative of the Lord who gives him the seed of devotional service, and if he takes advantage of such a guru or representative of God, he receives the bhakti lata bija, the seed of devotional service. If he properly cultivates Krishna consciousness, he is then gradually elevated to the spiritual world. So my sense of this audience is, some of you are, at least some of you, are experienced devotees, having read Prabhupada's books to at least a reasonable degree. Except this little girl, she's too playful. One day she'll read Prabhupada's books. It's going to take a while, though. So here's a question. On one hand, on the other hand. One of the verses in Chaitanya Charitamrita is Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sajakabunoi Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Karaye Udoi. You've heard the verse? So that verse is saying Krishna Prema is within the heart of every living entity. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sajakabunoi. Krishna Prema is already there. And then there's this other that describes that Brahmanda Brahmite Konda Bhagyavanji Guru Krishna Prasade Bhakti Lata Bij. By the combined mercy of Guru and Krishna, one may receive the bija of the Bhakti Lata, the Bhakti creeper. So, A, Krishna Prema is already there. B, Bhakti is received through the mercy of Guru and Krishna. So which is it? A or B? You see the contradiction? Not only Bhakti, Krishna Prema is already there. Within the heart of every living entity. B, one receives the seed, the bija of Bhakti Lata. One may receive by the combined mercy of Guru and Krishna. So is it already there, or is it something you have to receive? Huh?
It has to be.
Has to be received.
It is already there.
It's already there, but it has to be received. So then that's option 3.
It has to be awakened.
Through the Bhakti Lata Bij, you can attain the Krishna Prema.
Yeah. But it's so, I'm asking the question in part so that everybody's sitting on the edge of their seat and, all cylinders are moving. That's why I'm asking the question. It's how Krishna does things. Yes, Krishna Prema is there, but that Krishna Prema is dormant. Consciousness is covered. Consciousness is there. Consciousness in its mature stage is there, but in a seed-like form. The Krishna Prema is in a seed-like form. So it's the contact of bhakti that's the seed that awakens the dormant Krishna Prema, and it may, if one follows the bhakti process properly, become awakened and matured. So both are needed. It's a combination of both. Now, the good news is Krishna Prema is already there. So we don't have to go and get it. But we have to get the mercy of Guru and Krishna. And not only get it, but continue to apply it. Just like growing a garden. You have to cultivate the seeds. And by watering and by sunlight and watering and sunlight, not too much, watering and sunlight, gradually the seed will sprout and become a mature plant or tree or whatever is the seed of. So the Bhakti Lata creeper shows that one can gradually become elevated to the spiritual world. That's what this illustration is meant to show. So we require good fortune. In the case of Prahlada, he received both. The good fortune was Narada Muni. He received the good fortune of Narada Muni while he was within the womb of his mother, and Narada gave nice spiritual teachings to Kayadu, to his mother, while Prahlada was still in the womb. And he heard, and that hearing, although he was in the womb, that hearing was still effective. Enough that when he left the womb, he was already arrived at the state of awakened Krishna Prema, or Vishnu Prema, or Nrsimha Prema, by hearing. Okay, now the last of 3 verses. Here's the Sanskrit. I put it color-coded so that you can see, corresponding with the Sanskrit, what's the English. My dear Lord, O Supreme Great, you have created this material world of 16 constituents. but you are transcendental to their material qualities. This is the oneness and difference teaching, all 3 verses. In other words, these material qualities are under your full control and you are never conquered by them. Therefore, the time element is your representation. Kala Shakti represents the Supreme. The force of time is the force of the Supreme Lord, acting to bring things, to maintain things, or to destroy things. My Lord, O Supreme, no one can conquer you. As for me, however, I am being crushed by the wheel of time, and therefore I surrender fully unto you. Now, kindly take me under the protection of your lotus feet, because the previous verse was saying, through that shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, that's the only means to overcome the force of the material energy covering the living entity. So he's Bhakta Prahlad. He's Bhakta. He understands his predicament. He understands the means to overcome the predicament. Now, in these verses, he hasn't specifically mentioned the name Narada, but in later verses, he's going to specifically mention the name. The merciful person who helped him become awake to his true spiritual identity. The time element is your representation. I like the Bhagavatam. I'm sure you do too, but I like the Srimad Bhagavatam. It takes things that we're familiar with, but the presentation of those, even those things we're very familiar with, presents them in a different way. So time is not just tick, 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 tick. It's just, you can measure the movements of time, but time moves everything. We don't see it. It's invisible. It's not within our inspection. We don't see time moving things, but time moves things. And Prahlada is saying time is crushing. He's just a little boy. But he understands whatever comes into being is destroyed. So time is destroying all of us. Not just, the senior citizens in the room. Time is destroying all of us on the physical plane. But if we become situated in timelessness, in the spiritual atmosphere, then we're not destroyed. Among subduers I am time, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita chapter 10. This is opulences of the Absolute. Time I am the great destroyer of the worlds, and I have come here to destroy all people. Chapter 11 of Bhagavad Gita. Nishpidyamana, being crushed, is the word that he's used in this verse. Every living entity in the material condition is actually being crushed again and again. Now, we may not feel it because it may be very slow and gradual, but the force of time can't be escaped by any of us, with one exception. Take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. To be saved from this position, we must take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then one will be happy. We want happiness, but often the concept of happiness is it's out there somewhere in the material energy. I just have to configure it properly, and voila, happiness. I didn't get it right last time, but next time I'm going to be smarter, and happiness is going to be the experience. So we keep like a donkey chasing the carrot, expecting happiness in the next moment. The next moment is senses meet sense objects. Yehi samsparsha ja bhoga. That's the phrase in Bhagavad Gita. Samsparsha. The sense is contacting a sense object. Samsparsha. Yea, he, samsparsha ja bhoga. It's the anticipation of happiness by the senses coming in contact with sense objects. But what happens? Dukkha doshanudarshanam. It's like, I don't know if you have these little toys, but when I was a little boy, I remember we had a jack-in-the-box. You know what a jack-in-the-box is? You wind the thing up, you put the jack-in-the-box in the box, and you press the top, and makes a noise. It's just a spring and a little puppet kind of thing, and makes a noise. Then you push it down again and wind it. So you expect happiness, you're getting a shock. And you do it again and again. It's like child's play. Or just have bigger toys to do the same thing. The expectation is happiness. The reality is it's the jack-in-the-box experience. It's not what real happiness is. And however many times a child can do the same thing over and over again, it's never really what happiness is. And we do it again and again, lifetime after lifetime. Expecting sukha, and instead comes dukkha. Dukkha yoni. Dukkha yonaya evate. Yoni means the place of birth. The place of birth, the womb of dukkha, is the expectation of happiness in senses meeting sense objects. That's the womb for distress, dukkha. Every time. That's the Prakriti's arrangement. And there is an option. The option is taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why must we take shelter of Krishna or the Personality of Godhead? Not just to avoid the dukkha, but to come to the position of our constitutional nature. This is the Prabhupada's purport. When we give up our constitutional position, Jivera Swarupa Hai Krishnara Nityadas, when we give up our constitutional position, the Supreme Personality of Godhead creates this material energy and her influence over the conditioned soul. Therefore, He is the Supreme, and only He can deliver the conditioned soul from the onslaught of material nature. Mam eva ye prapadyante. Bhagavad Gita. How many times have we all heard Bhagavad Gita is the undergraduate, Bhagavatam is the graduate. So the teachings of Bhagavatam are amplified or illustrated more completely in the Bhagavatam, but it's just the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Illustrated helps to understand something by a nice illustration. So here we're getting that nice illustration. Prapanam. Unless one fully surrenders to the Supreme Lord, one cannot be saved from being crushed. So Prabhupada is taking the language or the poetic language of Prahlada and churning the language in different ways. So there's a living entity struggling for happiness in the waves and whirlpools of the ocean of material existence. And one can become exhausted from that circumstance. And here's Lord Vishnu coming. It's just a nice painting. He's reaching his hand. Of course, Garuda could pick him up too, but Lord Vishnu is reaching his hand over the side of Garuda to reach the hand of the conditioned soul who's reaching to the Lord to take shelter, be rescued. Prapanam. Nice word. Nice word. Okay, so that's our 3 verses from the prayers of Prahlada Maharaj to the Personality of Godhead, Lord Nrsimhadeva. And one more thing. Prahlada's a young boy, and he hasn't been educated thoroughly yet because he's just a young boy. So when he comes before Lord Nrsimhadeva, he's a little bit in awe and unprepared to speak so eloquently. So it's similar to the pastime with Dhruva, where the Lord touches him with his conch shell. In this case, Lord Nrsimhadeva touches him with his hand or his paw on the head of Prahlad. And this gives Prahlad the capacity of eloquence. Now, he's already heard all these teachings from Narada, but how to speak them when he's just a little boy. So it's the empowerment of the personality of Godhead. My thought is going to, just one more sharing. During the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's youth, he was not known as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was known as Nimai Pandit. Nimai Pandit was, young, Brahmana boy, and he had a grammar school, Vyakarana. It was really good. He was so good, he had a lot of other students sitting in his classroom. And the most elevated scholar in the country, named Keshava from Kashmir, he was his Digvijay Pandit. Digvijay means he traveled around and he went from place to place. He found out who was the most learned person in that place. He challenged the person to debate, and he'd defeat the person. And the system was, if you were defeated by another person in debate, then you had to become their follower. So he had lots of followers all over the country. And when he came, because at that time, historically, Navadvip was one of the seats of high learning. So he came to Navadvip and he was asked around, who's the most brilliant person? I want to debate with the most brilliant person in all of Navadvip. And they all said the same person, Nimai Pandit. So he went to Nimai Pandit and wanted to have a debate. But Nimai Pandit just flipped it around the other way. Oh, I've heard about you, Keshava Kashmiri. You're such a learned scholar. Would you be so kind as to compose some verses glorifying Mother Ganga? The man was capable, and he also had pride. There's a little, is your daughter good at math? Are you good at math? Huh? Simple math. Pay attention. I'm going to do a math equation for you. You ready? She's going. Okay. Okay, somebody else. We'll just, all of you. Here's a little math formula. The fruits of piety plus a heart that's impure equals fill in the blank. Pride. Fruits of piety plus a heart that's impure equals pride. So Keshava Kashmiri had the fruits of piety. He was a worshipper of the goddess Saraswati, and he ardently worshipped Saraswati and had fruits of that worship. So he had great erudition, great scholarship, and a heart that was proud. So to deflate his pride, Nimai Pandit asked him, could you please compose verses in glorification of Mother Ganges? Oh yes. Non-stop, 100 verses in perfect Sanskrit glorifying Mother Ganges is said in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, like the blowing of the wind. And he was expecting a round of applause at the end. Nimai Pandit said, well done, well done. Could you tell me in verse number 64 of the 100, which are the qualities and which were the faults? Lakshana and dosha. Which were the good qualities and which were the faults? He said, I just composed, I didn't memorize. So beside no faults, it's all perfect. Nimai Pandit verbatim quoted verse number 64, said these are the qualities, and here's the faults. And Keshava Kashmiri said, how did you remember? He said, some people are gifted with speech, some people are gifted with memory. I have a good memory. And he was embarrassed because he was correct. He had made mistakes, because a person that's imperfect is going to make mistakes. There's 4 defects, and he had defects. He had endowments, but he also had pride along with mistakes. In the course of that discussion, the point was to illustrate, the story is narrated to have even a very qualified person who is proud, even they can do something very wonderful, it's tainted. It's kind of, in one sense, spoiled by that pride. So Prahlada is giving a teaching of how to become free from the influence of the material contamination, which is moved forward by the time energy. But if one can become in touch with eternal time through taking shelter of the personality of Godhead, then one can be relieved of that material circumstance. And, as said, be situated in the Swarupena Vyavastati. Muktir Hitvanyata Rupam. Swarupena Vyavastati. Be situated in a spiritual, and that's true for us too. Whatever we are or aren't, whatever our piety or lack of it, whatever our material condition is, there's a source of everything, and if we take shelter of that source of everything, it can lift us beyond the good and the bad of the mix. That's the message. Both spiritual material are from the same source, the personality of Godhead. Take shelter of the personality of God, and we become situated beyond both. She's a dancer too. Okay, any discussion or comments, questions? Yeah. I mean, I'm compliments to so many persons here. It's not like big space, but you've all come. So thank you. And compliments to all of you for your eagerness to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Yes.
This is a question for how do you stay detached while still engaging with people or activities, like the example that he still had a duty, even if he was a devotee, to take care of the people, and some attachment is almost natural. So how do you overcome?
Her question, if I've understood it, correct me if I didn't understand it correctly. Attachment to material circumstances, people, or things is natural. And on the one hand, because it's natural, we don't want to stop being social beings. But how do you where's the brake pedal for attachment? How do you handle the fact that being in social circumstances, you get attached to people or things? And how do you stay transcendental to that attachment? That's your question? You want to embellish it a little?
It's just that you have the duty to.
You have a duty to engage with people.
So how do you stay detached while
Okay. How do you stay detached while staying engaged? It's in this verse, or these 3 verses. You got to be attached to something. So positive and negative. If the focus of your attachment is the source of everything, you can be involved with things, recognizing the connection of things with the source of everything, and remain in this dutiful service-mindedness, engaging with things and people and stuff without attachment. The simple answer is being attached to the Supreme. Mayastakta manak parta yogam yunjan badarshaya samshayam samagram mam itagyasya tachrino, in Bhagavad Gita language. If you can be attached, so how do you become attached? To the source of everything. It's the process of devotional service. Because we all, as you're using the word duty, we have a nature, each of us has a nature, and fundamental to our nature is we all serve someone or something. It's just what all of us do. So if that focus, while you're serving someone, something, or someone's, or some things, the focus is service to the Supreme, then there's the service to someone's and some things carries on, but the purpose behind it stays in focus because there's attachment to the source. I mean, your question you're asking is very similar to question to the one from this afternoon. Yeah, very similar. And did you get a copy of that document? This sharing with all of you. It's not a Bhagavad Gita verse. Bhagavad Gita verse has already been quoted. Mother Teresa, celebrated personality, who sacrificed everything to take care of orphans in Calcutta. She had an orphanage or several orphanages, and so there's a nice little document. You can circulate it to everybody, however you circulate things to everybody. But she gives like 6 or 7 different things. You can have a confrontation situation where even when you're not looking for it, do the right thing anyways. When you do selfless work, people may criticize you for being selfish. You have a motive. Be selfless anyway, and so forth. Whatever you create in this world, your whole lifetime, someone can destroy in a minute afterwards. Create wonderful things anyways. So, and on, several things. And the punchline is, in the final analysis, it's not between you and them, it's between you and God anyways. So that is to say, the position of service ultimately is service to the Supreme. And there are other personalities involved in those duties. That's natural, that's life. It's just fine. And let those duties to others be centered on service to the Supreme. Do that service to others in such a way the Supreme will be pleased with that intention and purpose. And then there isn't the attachment to the temporary subsides. And in its place is attachment to the eternal, or attachment to the Supreme. That's a simple solution, at least in principle simple, and then to apply it takes a lifetime of bhakti. Anyone else? Huh?
I have a question.
She has a question. Okay. Yeah.
So, regarding the Swarupena Vyavastha, today we have seen that the description of mukti. So, is it the same kind of mukti? Like in case of Shishupal, Krishna also liberated him. Is it the same kind of mukti or is it different?
The question you could, her voice is soft. What kind of mukti is this speaking about? For example, Krishna, when he killed Shishupal, Shishupal achieved mukti. So is that the kind of mukti we're talking about? Well, another, that the image that was on the screen was Narada from his previous life became Narada in his eternal spiritual form. That's his Svarupa, his Svarupa, his spiritual form. And attaining one's spiritual form is mukti. Now there's other kinds of mukti that are the merging kind of mukti, where one loses one's physical identity and one tries, at least by aspiration, to become one with Brahman. And in the one with Brahman situation, this Swarup, the spiritual form, is denied. Or, at least the intention is. However, specifically with Shishupal, the annihilation of Shishupal resulted in his returning to his spiritual position as one of the gatekeepers of Vaikuntha, Jai and Vijay. That's exceptional. That's certainly exceptional. Or Putana. When Putana was killed, she achieved her spiritual form because she was killed by Krishna. And that liberation that she achieved was as a maid servant of Mother Jasoda in Goloka Vrindavan. Wow. So that's this Swarupa Vyavastati. That's the meaning. As opposed to the more conventional sense that mukti means nirvana, cessation of material existence. Yes.
Maharaj, you're talking about these 14 planetary systems.
Yes.
All of them are part of the material,
Yes.
and all of these devatas are also living in the same material world.
Yes. They have, it's a detail. Devatas have different realms. Svarga is the common realm. However, it's a detail, but there are presiding deities in the layers of the covering of the universe, and those are the prototype devas, of which the devas in Swarga are situated. I'll say it again. I'll say it again. I'll say it again. I'll say it slowly. Each universe has 7 coverings. And each of the 7 coverings is of a different element. And in each of those 7 coverings, there's a deity, a deva of that covering. So those devas in the covering, they're one and different from the devas in Swarga. They're the prototype from which the devas in Swarga manifest. It's a detail. The different places where devas can reside. There's 2, and there's others. It's just, that's part of cosmology. But there's a function of devas, and that's controlling some feature of the material realm. That's what devas are empowered to do. They're invested with that power. Jivas with some invested controlling power on behalf of the Supreme, who's the source of their power, and gives, the job description for what they're controlling is to accomplish.
So are they also in the same way affected by the material world?
Oh yeah. They're higher, not by their piety, but also by consciousness. So they can do many things that others can't do.
They are also working towards the same direction, like
No,
we are supposed to.
they may and they may not. Generally speaking, this is, generally speaking, they're attached to the post and to the power that they have. They have an additional attachment, so it's a mix. They're mixed devotees. They have an attachment to the Supreme, but they also have an attachment to their power. And the material feature of their power, not the spiritual feature of their power. Let's take a little, conventional example. Someone's good at singing. Some people aren't good at singing, but some people are good at singing. And they're singing characteristics that are excellent, more excellent in the other direction. And then there's bhakti that's behind the excellent singer that makes whatever they're singing is so wonderful. That's the perfection of singing, or that's it. So the perfection of a deva is like her question, they're doing a service, but the attachment grows toward the Supreme, grows and grows and grows, and they go beyond the attachment to the temporary, and they may become more and more and more attached to the Supreme. At least the facility is there. And then how do we grow our attraction for Krishna Bhakti to a position that's in this liberated stage, or spontaneous stage, or Raga Bhakti? It's possible to not. It's possible to stay a long time, get stuck in mediocrity, or, business as usual with Bhakti. It's possible, and it's possible to go further. It's not. My point is, it's not mechanical. Our bhakti process is not, because they're devas, they don't automatically go higher. Because we're doing sadhana bhakti, we don't automatically go higher. We have to hear clearly what sadhana bhakti is, and then do those things in sadhana bhakti that help us go to the next level, next level, next level. Or just stay in the sadhana bhakti platform. And in our next birth, take another birth, where we continue where we left off, by Krishna's mercy. But it's certainly possible within the teachings and the Sangha, Vaishnav Sangha, to go to Raga Bhakti.
Let's take an example of Narad Muni.
Yeah.
He is liberated soul.
Yes.
But Brahmaji, who is his father,
Yeah.
he is not liberated.
That's right.
So, but Brahmaji also gave instructions to Narad Muni.
Yeah.
So, but he
Teacher,
has,
student.
he
That's
has the knowledge, but he's not able to get liberated.
nice point. Nice point. Nice point. Is it possible? The answer, you're giving an example of where the answer to this question is yes. Is it possible for the student, in this case Narada, to surpass the teacher? Yes, because within the teachings, it's everything. Oh yeah, go ahead, help me.
So Mataji is asking,
Yeah, help me.
what is Brahma? Which plane Brahma is sitting?
Which what?
Plane. So in the whole cosmic manifestation,
Brahmaloka, topmost planet. What is the what? What is? It's below Brahmaloka. It's Bhuvar Svargaloka. Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Brahmaloka. That's the 7 upper. So Brahmaloka is the topmost. But all of them, the 7 upper and the 7 lower, 14, they're all within the universe. They're not in Vaikuntha. But the question, or the conversation was this question: Narada is a Vaikunthavasi. So how'd that happen? Well, no problem. He can take birth, a Vaikunthavasi, for the service of the Supreme Lord, can take birth. Now, how he took birth, we saw. He manifested this form from his previous life. Now, he also appeared, there are different days of Brahma, and during different days of Brahma, Narada may appear this way, Narada may appear that way in different days of Brahma. The main point is, a Vaikunthavasi can appear in this world. Let's take a nice example. The nice example of Bhaktisiddhanta. You're familiar. Bhaktivinoda Thakur prayed. Bhaktivinoda Thakur prayed to the Supreme Lord, please send a descendant from Vaikuntha. Please send a Vaikunthavasi, because Kali Yuga is very dark and getting darker. Please send a ray of Vishnu. So Bhaktisiddhanta, ray of Vishnu, that's the title of his biography. So it's possible. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a pure devotee, plus. And Brahma is not in the same position. He's an elevated Vaishnava, but he's not in the pure devotee position, as was Narada. Okay? Yeah, you go ahead.
स्टेज में काम स्टेज की तो जब हम हायर स्टेज पे पहुंचे विष्णु की स्टेज पे तब हमारे कॉन्शियसनेस तब हम विष्णु नरसिंहनारायण मंदिर के
के बाद हमेशा नित्य मुक्त, लेकिन भगवान लीलाओं ब्रह्मा जो है पूरी तरह से शुद्ध बहुत ही अच्छे वैष्णव, लेकिन अभी भी
वैकुंठ ही वैकुंठ जहाँ कोई आपके मन में कोई नॉट नहीं, प्योर हार्ट, दैट इज वैकुंठ. एवरीवन कैन रीच इन हिज वर्ड्स. तो हम सब ने उस स्टेज पे पहुंचना. आवर कॉन्शियसनेस शुड रीच देयर. ये कॉन्शियसनेस की बात है, किसी ब्रह्मा की बात कोई वो नहीं. Everyone has to reach.
She's got mixed in English and Hindi, right?
Yeah. बात करूँगी because I know Hindi.
But I don't.
Yeah, but he is the.
That's why he got him involved. Yeah. So, can you just summarize what simple.
Mother is saying that that Vaikuntha is a place without
Vaikuntha is what?
a place without Nikuntha. Okay.
Without what?
Kuntha.
Misery.
Okay. Vaikuntha means without Kunta. Okay.
And a jiva can actually elevate himself
Yeah.
to a higher realm.
Well, the jiva can become elevated, not elevate himself. A jiva can become elevated by mercy of Guru and Krishna. Yeah, so?
So basically, due to that, Mataji being the person that none can become a Narayan. So, which is what we agree now.
Narada becomes Narayan? No. Jiva doesn't become Vishnu. No. No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. No. Don't put those words in my mouth, please. No, I did not. You heard wrong. You heard me incorrectly. Thank you. I think it's time to end. I brought some Mahaprasadam with me, and I'd like to go around and distribute some Mahaprasadam. But there was this is the one. There was another. There's a glass.